Today it's my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome a true pioneer and legend in the world of natural health as he brings practical solutions to one of today's biggest problems, the COVID pandemic. Dr. Joseph Mercola founded Mercola.com in 1997 as a portal for natural health information and resources. It is one of the first health websites established to cater to readers who are interested in holistic medicine.
We actually have been the number one most visited natural health site in the world for the last 17 years, and still are, even despite the Google censorship about a year ago. So it's a great, first adopter advantage, exactly, because I started the site before Google started theirs.
Yeah, I know you've had some issues with Google and some of the other.
Well, as many others. I'm not the only one. There's hundreds of other sites, as you're well familiar. I'm sure your readers are too.
Absolutely, yeah. And before we get into your campaign, because we really want to focus on your campaign, I want to talk about that. A recent guest we had, who I know you're familiar with, Dr. David Brownstein. He was successfully using natural protocols that included oral nutritional supplements, and he was very successful in treating hundreds of very serious COVID patients before he was effectively shut down by FDA and FTC. I wonder if you have any thoughts on this censorship and how it affects our ability to climb out of the crisis.
He actually emailed me when the FTC sent him his warning letter, and I guided him through the process and gave him some insights on what to do. But although he does recommend oral supplementations, his primary innovation is nebulized hydrogen peroxide, and I interviewed him for this. He actually published a study with over 100 patients and has actually done another dozen or two since he published that effectively treated this disease with this strategy that literally, if you have a nebulizer, which I think everyone should just specifically for this intervention, the cost of the peroxide is less than 1 penny. Less than 1 penny to treat the illness. And are there side effects? No known side effects. And I've worked with about a half a dozen people. He's treated over 100. This thing is nothing short of miraculous. I mean, it really is a magic bullet for this disease. If you're sick, it basically takes care of almost everyone, and with virtually no side effects, and it's almost free. So that's his biggest innovation. And he's not a Johnny come lately. He started doing this in the mid 90s. He's been doing peroxide. So major hats off to him. He's an incredible pioneer in this area and really one of the leaders in this space. And I just recognize how important this strategy and intervention was this year after the epidemic hit. And wow. It's just amazing. Now, we're going to go into another approach that I think is even better, because ideally, remember, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So that nebulized peroxide is the pound, or actually a ton of cure, because, literally within hours, most of the people that I'm familiar with, they started and they're better. The symptoms are almost all gone. So it's just crazy. They can't breathe. They feel like they're going to die, and then they're better. It's like amazing. Well, so anyway, and actually the FTC didn't censor him. They just prevented him from putting the legitimate testimonials that he had recorded and interviewed from his patients, which is a very compelling to listen in the patient's own word, their personal experience of what this intervention did for their life. And even though he had a published study that was accepted in a peer-reviewed journal, they forbade him from doing that with incredible consequences if he failed to comply with their restrictions. So he complied, but they didn't stop him from doing the treatments. They just prevented him from publishing on his site.
And actually falsely accused him of making claims that this was some sort of cure, because he never did that on his website, even though the letters that he received claimed he did. So they actually misrepresented what he was even claiming to do.
Yeah, and it was probably just a template letter that they gave to probably dozens of people. So.
Well, since we talked about the pound of cure, let's talk about the ounce of prevention.
Yes,
exciting new campaign, and I want to hear a little bit more about your campaign for stopping COVID cold with vitamin D, and how this relates to the current crisis.
Well, I've actually created a whole website, and you said the name of it. It's Stop COVID Cold, all one word.com. StopCOVIDcold.com. It's free. There's no email opt-ins. It's just basically the site that's designed to give you the information you need, and not so much important because most of the people watching this probably know this, and that's fine. But what that is desperately needed is the public at large needs to have this information if they're going to implement this and prevent themselves from being crippled and injured and possibly killed by this disease, which is absolutely unnecessary. Almost everyone can prevent this if they take the appropriate strategies. And the primary one that I think almost everyone is deficient in, there's two, but Stop COVID Cold is primarily focused on vitamin D. I've been teaching people about this online for about 2 decades, and actually I was largely responsible for catalyzing the acceptance of this modality into traditional medicine. Now even conventional physicians don't disagree that vitamin D is useful, and they regularly test for it, but they haven't accepted the fact that it can be an incredibly powerful intervention to prevent, that ounce of prevention to prevent disease like COVID. So the thing is, ideally, it's not something you can do like the peroxide where you take it and within hours you're better. Vitamin D takes time to build up into your system and to activate the appropriate pathways to upregulate your immune response. So ideally you want to have it tested before. So the site, Stop COVID Cold, we put it together with a number of experts, and it's really cool because you can go there and literally in less than 2 minutes you can answer a number of questions. And once you finish answering, you'll know exactly what your risk is. Are you at very low risk? Are you at medium? Are you at very high risk? And then not only that, so you get the test results instantly, but it will tell you what you need to work on to change your risk. And most people, as I said, 90% of the people, it's going to be vitamin D because their levels, 90% of the public has vitamin D levels that are too low. And not only does vitamin D improve your resilience and resistance to infections, viral infections like COVID, I mean, it's been well documented for viral upper respiratory infections. COVID obviously is a new disease. It's been with us for less than a year. So the actual scientific randomized controlled trials designed to scientifically test and validate and prove this hypothesis are still underway, although one was just published last week to validate it. But it's something that is a simple intervention. It's essentially not only improves your resilience against the infection, but it also improves your entire health. So it radically reduces your risk for heart disease, for cancer, for autoimmune diseases, and just improves your whole system. It's an incredibly powerful intervention that is, if you're going to now, and so how do you get it? Well, if you go to the site, you not only get the test and the test results, but there's 2 documents there. One is a simple document. It's 10 pages, lots of graphics, easy to read and understand and implement, that will tell you how to do that. And if you're a healthcare professional, we have an advanced version of that is more detailed and is a paper I actually had published with about 300 references that goes into the specific science and details of why vitamin D is useful. So, but basically, there's 2 ways to get it. One is with the sunshine, and as we're recording this, fall is upon us. Daylight savings time is coming, and so the consequence of that, unless you live in the southern areas, you're really not going to get vitamin D too easily from the sun. The time has lapsed. Summer is gone. So you go somewhere south or you resort to taking oral supplements. You don't have to take oral supplements. You were designed to get it from the sun, and I think that's the way I particularly have gotten it for the last 10 years. I haven't swallowed a vitamin D supplement. So if you're getting it from the sun, it's free. There's no charge. But even if you lived in the Middle East, where there's sun 24/7, not 24/7, year-round, you still have to go outside. And you have to have enough skin exposed. So you have to have the ability, the opportunity, but then you have to implement it and you have to go out. So most people in the United States, sun exposure, I would say it's less than 5% of the people are going to get it from sun. Either their environment or the circumstances simply don't allow it because they're working, although many people now are working at home if they're working at all. So they probably could do it, but you're doing that. So either sun, ideally, because there's other benefits other than vitamin D, you can get upregulate nitric oxide, and you can cause your water to become structured from the near infrared radiation in the sun. So there's a lot of powerful benefits: simple photobiomodulation, circadian rhythm optimization. So it's really good to be in the sun. Now, like any good thing, you don't want to abuse it. It's like too much of a good thing is not good. It's like Goldilocks. You want the right amount. So you never want to get sunburned because that is dangerous. But sensible sun exposure on enough skin is a powerful strategy to upregulate your health and improve your resilience to this infection. So, and ideally, you know, your vitamin D level is something like your blood pressure level, in that there's a good range and a bad range, and you can't tell, but you can't feel it. The only way to do it is to test it, to measure it. So thankfully, that's a real simple blood test. Almost every doctor knows about it now, that you can easily order, or if you don't want to bother with the doctor, you can get it online. And we tell you places where you can do that and measure it. You just have to mail it in. You don't have to go to a lab. They mail you the stuff, and you prick your finger, put blood on a little piece of cardboard, send it in the mail, and they send you the results back. So it's really simple, and that's this way you can optimize and figure out. Because if you're taking pills, you can guess what the right dose is, but everyone's different, especially if you're also getting some sun exposure. So that's basically it on the vitamin D, and it's just a crazy cost-effective solution with virtually no side effects except for good ones, and that it reduces your risk for almost all diseases. It's crazy good, and it's something we were designed to have. All of our ancestors, if they were outside in the sun on a regular basis, had optimized vitamin D levels, and that's what we're designed to do. But because of industrialization and living indoors most of the time and working indoors, we just don't get outside enough, and as a result, most of us have low vitamin D levels, and it's complicated if you have dark skin. So now, if you've known all this and everything I've said, that's great. You're in the informed part of the population. But the purpose of this site, stopcovidcold.com, is to get this information out to the public. So we've created a resource that's easy to use, to send to your friends and family, to even take an activist role, to go out into the community, to go to the Black churches and Black groups who are most at risk, primarily because their skin color is dark enough that they need so much more sun exposure to optimize their vitamin D level. So unless they're taking, in their sun, like, it is really hard to have deeply colored skin, pigmented skin, and then have good vitamin D levels. You almost have to be taking vitamin D unless you're living in the tropics. It's just, so that's at risk population. And of course, the other one is the elderly, especially those in assisted living facilities and nursing homes. So because they don't get out too much. So, and their age limits their body's ability to actually produce this beneficial vitamin D. So those are two target populations, and if you could put some effort and energy towards directing this message to them, then we could actually make a dent in this and, reduce people's fears and radically address what I think is probably one of the biggest existential threats to our personal freedoms and liberty that this crisis is producing, because of the fear that it's implementing and their ability to tyrannically control and implement these measures to basically twist our behavior, manipulate it in ways that serves their purposes, and not really addressing the underlying realities of what this infection really is. Because it's a serious infection. A lot of people have died from it, but it's not the most serious infections we've ever faced. There's far more serious and deadly infections. But either way, it's the same strategy. You can use the strategies of the peroxide and some of the supplementation. I suspect Dr. Brownstein discussed. I discuss it on my site too. I've done a video. I actually interviewed Brownstein, as I said, and I've got the interview on my site with him, and we go into details on how to implement the peroxide therapy. As I mentioned, I think almost everyone should have a nebulizer. You want to get them beforehand. They're getting harder to find because this message is getting out, even though it's being censored. People know that this works, and this is not something you want to go out and grab when you have the illness. You want it in your emergency box, ready to be used the moment you need it. Because like any disease, the sooner you treat it, the easier it is. The later, late course in the illness, even though it still works, it's harder. So, and you're gonna have less damage too, because this is a pesky virus. We're finding some potential long-term complications of this, unlike other viruses. So you just don't want it to hang around too long.
And I love what you say about resilience, because that, I mean, at the end of the day, that is the key to all this, right? What,
Hmm.
94% or something of everybody that's had serious complications from COVID has some sort of pre-existing condition, have some sort of reduced levels of immunity. So if anything
Yes.
we can do to bolster, yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And thank you for reminding me of that, because there are two, as I mentioned, 90% of the people are deficient in vitamin D, but 90% of the United States population also has a condition called metabolic inflexibility, or otherwise known as insulin resistance, which means they have lost the ability to seamlessly switch between burning fat and as their primary fuel, and they're using carbohydrates. So that creates a very serious metabolic pattern that absolutely increases their resistance to this disease. So, and there's a lot of simple strategies I discuss in this. I have it on my site. Things like time-restricted eating, and would be one of the most powerful, where you're limiting the hours of the day that you're eating to about 6 or 8 hours, because most people, including probably more than 90% of the people watching this, are eating more than 12 hours a day. And that's not a good strategy if you want to stay healthy, and especially if you're eating right before you go to bed, because that's just a recipe for metabolic disaster. So simple things like that, and time-restricted eating doesn't cost anything. It's free. There's no supplements to buy. It's even cheaper than hydrogen peroxide, which is pretty cheap. So, and that would improve your metabolic flexibility, even if you don't go to the next step and level and address the types of foods that you're eating, which has a really big thing. And there's two primary offenders most people are aware of the first one, which is sugar, processed sugar. But what's probably even worse than processed sugar are these processed vegetable oils, more appropriately called seed oils, because they did a massive PR campaign on this. Instead of calling them industrially processed seed oils, they call them vegetable oils, because vegetables are supposed to be healthy, right? Well, these things like soybeans and canola and corn oil, first of all, they're almost all GMO, genetically modified, sprayed to the hilt with glyphosate and other toxic poisons. But what's even worse than those poisons is the high dose of omega-6 fats that you get, primarily linoleic acid, which again just wrecked it. It is one of the primary reasons people become insulin resistant, because of this overwhelming, unnecessary high levels of these omega-6 fats in their diet. So those are something you want to avoid like the plague. And they're loaded in all processed foods. So the simple way to avoid processed foods. And almost every time you go out to a restaurant, in the past, there were restaurants that you could go that didn't have these, but these were the sit-down restaurants. These were the high fine dining restaurants, where some of them, not all of them, of course, but some of them did pay attention to the quality of the foods and the ingredients that they were using. But now almost every one of those restaurants are out of business, or they will be out of business shortly. And you know what they replaced them with, right, Tim? They replaced them with fast food restaurants. And every one of those is using high doses of vegetable oil. So you want to avoid those like the plague. You want to make your food at home and avoid these oils. If you have them in your home, one of the best things you can do is just think real hard of a neighbor or a relative that you really don't like and give them those oils, because they are not good for you or anyone in your family, anyone you love. So get them out of your home. They're just terrible. They're literally poison. They may even be worse than glyphosate on a long-term basis. I mean, I just don't know which one's more poisonous, but they're really bad. So simple things: time-restricted eating, get rid of the omega-6 industrially processed seed oils, limit your sugar, get some exercise, sleep, and then your body is designed to be healthy. It wants to be healthy. It's supposed to be healthy. It's only when you avoid these simple recommendations that it's not going to be healthy. If given the right materials, it moves towards health. It doesn't move towards disease. If you believe the mainstream narrative, especially conventional medicine, you'll think that every ache and pain and health problem you have is a result of not taking a drug. Nothing could be further from the truth. It's just your body's natural feedback mechanism to give you the information, the keys, the clues that you're doing something wrong that it wasn't designed to be doing, and to wake up and change so that your body can get healthy the way it was designed to be.
we're all sitting around waiting for the leadership to do something. That is not going to happen. We all know that. We have to take control of our own health.
No, there's a narrative. There's definitely a direction that's being implemented by mainstream media. It is not for your health. I can assure you, and your team knows that really well, and mostly likely the people watching you, because this is really it's a grab to remove our personal freedoms and liberties. Is the fundamental reason why this narrative is being promoted.
And once again, Dr. Mercola, it's been an honor to speak with you, sir. We appreciate all of your fantastic information here and through the years. And we just really can't thank you enough for being with us today.
All right, Tim, I really appreciate the opportunity to share this message with your community and help spread the word so we can really make a dent on this. And, you just know that you can make a difference. Every one of you watching this can make a difference. You just don't have to, because the government's not going to do it. There's no way. The public health authorities aren't going to do it. Fauci's not going to do it. Gates sure the heck is not going to do it. It's upon us, once we understand the truth, to share this with the people that we care about.